The Emerald Knight, Chapter 13. Clint pulled Orinda closer into his bare chest with the hand buried in her hair, and she hummed happily in approval. "For one who speaks so rarely," she mused, "you have a skilled tongue." He smiled to himself and stared at the canopy over the bed. Orinda stretched an arm across her stomach and snuggled farther into his chest. Her body was still shaking from their encounter, and he briefly considered covering them with a blanket, but decided that the effort to retrieve it would force him to move from the spot he now lay in, and there was nothing on heaven or Ren that would pry him from that spot. He heard Bruana begin to cry. He made to get up, and Orinda tightened her grip. "The nurse will get her," she explained. "Why do we even have a nurse?" Clint asked with a twinge of annoyance creeping into his voice. "So she can eat," Orinda explained, "and so I don't have two people waking me up in the middle of the night." "You've got tits," Clem pointed out, as if he genuinely believed she had forgotten. "Very observant, love," she said with no praise in her voice. "Good eye." "I mean," he explained, because he didn't pick up on the fact that she was making fun of him, "there's nothing wrong with you. Don't most people only hire nurses if there's something wrong with them and they can't feed their own children? Like when my mom died in childbirth, my dad had to hire a nurse." "You're such a man," Orinda huffed. "Listen, do you hear that?" She stopped. "What does that mean, you're such a man?" He arched an eyebrow and looked down at her. She giggled instead of answering, and he sighed. Bruana was safe. Bruana was safe. The princess was safe. "I'm gonna go check on the baby." He gently pulled Orinda off of him and stood. "Clint, you're drunk," she sighed and reached for the blanket herself. "I'm not, I promise. I think I burned it all off from the exercise." He smirked, and Orinda smiled back at him. "You look good with a real smile. Is this how I get them?" she mused, watching him. "Yeah." He scooped his pants off the floor and sat back on the bed to pull them up, still smiling. Orinda reached out a hand and ran it down his bare back, and he shuddered. "I like being with you," he explained when he found his voice. "I don't know if it seems like it. I know I make you sad." "Where did you come up with that, Clint? The idea that you make me sad? Was it from the screaming or the broken furniture?" She laughed. "No, not right now. I mean," he trailed off in thought, "just all the time. I'm sorry. You're the only man I know who can work an apology into pillow talk." She sighed. "I'm dehydrated. You've killed me. If you see a servant, will you get me something to drink?" "Of course." He stood and tied his breeches in place, then turned back to the bed. He reached out a hand, cupped Orinda's face, and pulled her into a kiss. There was less energy than before, less raw passion, but he was trying to say something, and she understood it. When he pulled away, he promised, "I'll be right back." He made his way to the nursery, where the nurse was tucking Bruana back into her crib. She was not startled to see him, but she did look annoyed. He doubted that she had been accosted by the master of the house every night at her last job. He knew that he was unusual. He tried to smile at her, but she looked worn. "I assure you, your majesty," she bowed her head slightly to avoid looking at him. "The baby is fine. She's getting to where she only wakes up about once a night. She's moving faster than most children her age." "I didn't mean—" Clem walked to the cradle and peered inside at his sleeping child. "That I thought she wasn't all right. I don't doubt you. I didn't mean to make you feel like I did. I just like to look at her. She's beautiful." "Yes," the nurse agreed. "I hope it doesn't go to her head," Clint suddenly realized. "You know, when she gets old enough to know that it means something." "I don't think it's worth worrying about yet, sir," the nurse assured him, and added, "If there's nothing else, I'll be going back to bed." Clint nodded and reached into the cradle to gently stroke Bruana's cheek. After a few seconds of standing in the darkness, watching the slow, steady rise and fall of her chest, he silently left the nursery, then his chambers altogether. He didn't think it was worth waking someone up to get his wife something to drink. "You're so fucking loud." A voice rang out from the shadows, and Clint tackled it before he knew what he was doing. The figure stumbled, and Clint's finely tuned senses released it when he realized it was only Morgan. "Why are you so tall?" he asked, as if such a question had an obvious answer. And why are you sneaking around in the shadows? I'm not tall. It's not my fault that you're a tiny little thing, and I heard the baby crying, which is even smaller than you, so my instinct to protect it kicked in even harder. And, as I already mentioned, no one can sleep for the goddamn screaming, which is, I assume, the only reason you're able to stand now. You must have worked the alcohol out of your body. Morgan straightened out his clothes and Clint eyed him, because it was odd for him to still be wearing them. Go to bed, Morgan. He rolled his eyes. You go to bed. You don't need more kids. Morgan sounded annoyed. I need 12, Clint mused and started walking again. What are you even doing? Morgan caught up with him in 2 long strides. It's the middle of the night. I'm going to get a drink. He glanced at Morgan's judgmental face and rolled his eyes again. Water or juice or something. Orinda says she's thirsty. You're king. I'm not an asshole, though. I can go to my own kitchen and get a drink. Clem pulled the hair off the back of his neck and wound it into a knot as he walked. Seriously, why are you hanging out outside my room? Were you listening at doorways? No one wants to hear you bang your schoolgirl, Clint. Everyone hears it, but no one wants to. You must be very proud, he grumbled. Then why? Clint fumbled around in his pockets for a ribbon and found none. Give me one of your 5,000 strappy things. So you can put it in your hair? Morgan scoffed. Yes, I'm burning up. Give it to me. He held out his hand and made a grabbing motion. I feel like I just spent 12 hours on the training ground. I think that firestone makes her body temperature even higher than it already is. Those fire elves are hot. Morgan unsnapped one of his bracelets, and Clint wound it around his hair and tied it into a bun. He had the grace not to make the obvious pun, but he could think of nothing else to say, so settled on repeating, You must be very proud. Shut up, Morgan. Why are you following me? Clint huffed. Because I like talking to you when you're in a good mood. Morgan smiled, and Clint looked away from him. I'm going back to bed as soon as I get her a drink. Don't you ever sleep? He huffed. Not as much as you people. High elves do well in the night. We're built for it, Morgan explained. I'm the only one who comes out in the sunlight. I don't know how you don't burn so badly all your skin peels off. Clint shoved him when he judged Morgan had gotten too close. You should see the others. Morgan sighed, and seemed to be in thought for a second, then said sincerely, I'm glad you're feeling better. I don't know why my first instinct when I see a problem is to try and kill it. Clint sighed. That's what I was so mad about. There was no reason for me to think that those nymphs needed to die. They only have one life, the same as everybody else. I forget that other people treasure theirs more than I do mine. He made it to the kitchen, opened the door to the cellar, and made his way down. Do you want something too? Wine or fruit or something? Clint, you know we only drink the blood of our enemies, Morgan teased. Is that a yes or a no? He asked rhetorically, as he stepped out carrying an armful of pears. He handed one to Morgan with a simple, Here, eat this. I thought she wanted a drink, Morgan mused as he bit into it. She needs the energy, Clint explained as he walked away, after what she's just been through.